Annie, I got a kid who wants someone who speaks Russian. Let's go.
No, I'm eating my food.
Welcome to the Filmcast coverage of Sean Baker's newest film, Anora, which is out in theaters right now. I'll read the plot summary from the internet. Anora, a sex worker from Brooklyn, gets her chance at a Cinderella story when she meets and marries the son of a Russian oligarch, end quote. We've talked about Sean Baker movies here on the Filmcast quite a bit. I think most of us are real fans to varying degrees. And I realized after watching this movie, like all of his movies are to some degree about people trying to realize the American dream in their own way, right? Like that's kind of what all the movies are. That's
people
the one thing that ties them,
in difficult circumstances trying to realize the American dream.
He's
People
also
who
like
basically
highlighted sex workers often, and
sex workers often,
very sympathetically.
Multiple.
Yeah.
In fact, basically all of his movies deal with sex workers in some way.
Yeah.
People who they generally don't make that many movies about, right? Are the people
Yeah.
who he makes movies about. And I think that's really remarkable and worthy of admiration and praise. Devendra Hardor, I'm really curious. Jeff Kanata's talked about this movie on the podcast already. He was a big fan. What did you think of Sean Baker's Anora?
Absolutely loved it. I love Sean Baker as a filmmaker. I think the one I like most and think about most often is the Florida Project and just how much that impacted me. I remember a review of that thing. This one, I did not quite know what to expect of this movie going in. I like Mikey Madison quite a lot, so seeing her in kind of a starring role was something I was looking forward to. Then this movie started, and I was like, "Oh yeah, this is a movie about strippers and people bearing themselves a lot." So that felt a little uncomfortable. Because I remember Mikey Madison from what was it, Better Things, and her TV work. So it is really weird when you remember a character from when they're much younger to like, oh yes, they're grown up now. They're doing grown up things. But I love the hell out of this movie. It is pretty much one of those like insane wild ride New York City movies, very much like After Hours. And I did not know that this movie was going to turn into that. I thought it would just be kind of like a really funny twist on something like a Pretty Woman story. And it is partially that. But it's also very much, just kind of a romp through New York City, but also I think a beautifully emotional and meaningful film too about people just trying to survive in this hellscape of capitalism. The choices people make are not always good ones in his movies, and this movie in particular, but also they seem justifiable to the point where like they're trying to make rent, they're just trying to survive in our society. And this is kind of funny too, because I think this is the first time we get to see like a truly rich character, like billionaire level character basically, who doesn't give a fucks, entering a Sean Baker story, which is typically about the people on the ground who have to work really hard just to exist. So that juxtaposition of somebody who is just so careless about life and about their responsibilities and about anything, to somebody who wants to be sort of like that and wants to have fun, but is also very clearly disciplined about what she's doing and how she exists as a worker. And there's even like she's bringing up like, yeah, boss, like when you give us healthcare and everything, when you give us a retirement plan, then you can really lay our schedules down. There's a lot of like pro worker stuff here and pro labor discussions that I think are really really interesting. This movie ends up just being a lot of fun. I would love to talk about the last scene with you guys because I feel like it just kind of I don't know, did not quite fully work for me, but I'd love to deconstruct that. What did you guys think of it?
Interesting.
Yeah.
It just to be clear, spoiler, it 100% worked for me. For the ending, but unlike the ending of Here, as we just argued,
I feel like it specifically. It doesn't quite work with the version of the character that we've got. And it feels like, a cheap thing. But yeah.
So I loved this movie. I had heard it was great. Stephen David Miller reviewed it on Decoding Everything, and he said it was like probably going to be one of his favorite films of the year. And I heard the premise of the movie, which is, this stripper meets this rich guy and gets married. And I was like, okay, like that doesn't sound like that interesting of a movie to me. Like, I don't know why people are saying this movie is amazing. And what became really clear to me watching the movie is really the movie is divided very clearly into two parts, right?
Yes.
The first component, it's like the first 40 minutes or so, is their love story and the meeting and falling in love and deciding to get married. And it's magical. It's like, oh wow, like maybe across the span of time and space through the cosmos, these two people who would never otherwise meet in this beautiful melting pot of a country, they can actually come together and find each other. And there's something amazing about that, right?
You don't think there's menace all the way through it from the very beginning?
Oh,
I think there's this
red
hint
flags.
of menace.
Yeah.
This
well, there's this hint of
foreboding.
menace of like his like what does this guy's dad do, and like
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I think all of it. I think what's so amazing about it being this sort of Cinderella tale is that in the real world, you start going, it's too good to be true. It's too good to be true.
I see. That's the menace. Yeah.
I feel like there's a sense of foreboding throughout the whole thing where you're just like,
well, it's just
girl,
like this is too.
girl, watch out.
Yeah.
Don't make fun of all the people you're leaving behind, girl.
This is, I will say, I wouldn't describe it as menace, but it's too simple, right?
Yeah.
The way
I felt a serious foreboding. I felt like,
Oh yeah.
ooh, this is.
I mean, she's already existing in a world that is kind of sketchy for her as a person and as a woman, you know. So that sense is there throughout this entire movie. I don't know if I describe the first half as a love story, because it is a story of mutual need. You know, like that's what it feels like. It is a story of convenience and mutual need.
Agreed.
I did not really feel romance of it. They have fun together. They like each other. Never really felt like, which is why, to the point where like he starts proposing, like she doesn't really believe it, and then she kind of convinces herself into it. Never felt like a love story.
interesting. I think let me put it this way. I think the aesthetics of it are like those of a love story, I would say.
Sure,
Like,
sure.
you know, like especially like after they get married and they're like celebrating in that underneath that big Vegas, you know, sky dome thingy, and
with
it's
the
just like,
fireworks going off and like, this
fireworks
is
going off,
America,
and
man.
it's like, oh, it's just so beautiful, you know. Whether it's actually watching these characters fall in love, I think you're right. It's less like an epic love story, more like these characters realizing, oh, like we can be with each other, you know. So whether you call that a love story or not,
even agree
Why
with
not
that.
this? Why not try this? Yeah.
I feel like they get caught up in the momentum of everything. And I think as an audience member, you are also caught up in the momentum of everything. And I think we can debate this, but I never thought that she was in love with him. And I certainly never thought he was in love with her.
I thought she was really amused by him because he is not like as gross as the other dudes.
I don't know if I describe it as love, but I did think that there was genuine affection. So
great affection.
That's my interpretation. But if you didn't feel that, that's fine. But like,
let me ask you this question: based only on the first half of the movie, would you bet on them being together in 20 years?
No,
of course not.
But
so I don't think
most
that
marriages fail. Like, that's a
okay.
Yes.
Like that's
not the question I'm asking.
No, I know, but like most marriages fail, and also they have like additional challenges on top of a regular.
It feels like this very immature flash in the pan from the word go. It never felt to me like.
Have you ever talked to somebody in their early 20s? Like it's just like the world through that eye.
Jeff, like I've seen relationships that start like that succeed. Like and so it's not odd.
But
to
you
me.
you just said that you didn't expect, based on the text of the movie, not based on what you bring in from outside other relationships, but the text of the movie led you to believe that they will not be together in 20 years. The only point I'm trying to make is I think there is a undermining of the Cinderella narrative from the word go.
No, yeah, definitely.
It is not presenting this beautiful thing that then gets shattered halfway through the movie. I think it is always presenting how unrealistic this whole concept is, and how in the real world this is it's foolhardy, and it's idealistic, but it's ultimately doomed. And how it's doomed is much more interesting, and we haven't even gotten into that yet. But I think this, regardless, it always felt to me like these are young kids making bad choices. It feels
like a beautiful lie. And it's like when she goes in a room with a guy and she starts saying like what she likes about them and starts telling them a story. It's about constructing a narrative.
Right.
But there are points where it's like, oh, like she just genuinely likes the guy, where he's playing video games after they've had sex once. She's like, you got time? Want to go again? Like she doesn't have to do that. But like there's a bit of that. But the red flag is like, he is also like clearly not interested in her. like as a person. He is interested in her as a, tool
Object.
for him to have fun with, or to,
a way
That
to
is clear
further
from
his
early
a way
on.
to further his own ends.
Yes.
Well,
I think
Jeff,
she has the similar feelings about him, though.
Yeah.
I think she
Yeah,
loves
yeah.
the lifestyle that he can provide for her. But go ahead.
I think there's a big difference between 20 years and like 3 years or 5 years, by the way. I just want to put that out there. And so you're asking me, like, are they going to be together 20 years? Who knows what's going to happen in 20 years? But like, if you ask me, would they be together in 3 or 5 years? I'd say maybe. Watching the first half of this movie, first 40 minutes of this movie. And I think it's because people meet in weird ass ways all the time. People overcome challenging circumstances all the time. So for me, it was plausible that they could figure out a way to make this work. Now,
your 20s are also a time for messy relationships too. So that is the age where the mess happens. Yeah.
But it's interesting. It's interesting, like we all bring in our own different sort of perspectives. And so like, I respect that, like, you never felt it was going to work. And I'm like, hey, maybe they had a chance. Who knows? Of course, that was before I found out about all the Russian oligarch stuff, and like, and then I was like, okay, this probably doesn't have a chance. Like, shortly after the 40-minute mark, I was like, this probably doesn't have a chance.
One of the things that I mentioned when we talked about this on the main show is that one of the reasons I love this movie is that I love it for what it isn't as much as for what it is. And as we're getting into the Russian oligarch stuff, I thought, oh, here we go. It's going to be their mafia, their
because there's going to be like physical danger involved.
I love the fact that this movie does not contain a single gun. There's no firearm.
Yeah,
I love that. The fact that these guys come in and you think, oh, here we are. We're going to be in the Russian Sopranos, and she's got herself embroiled in this Quentin Tarantino plot, you know. But it never does that. It's doing something, I think, even more fun and even more interesting, which it like humanizes the goons.
Yeah, absolutely.
And makes you kind of, I was relating to them big time.
Absolutely. I mean, it's less Vincent Vega and more Michael Clayton. Right, it's more like these are like guys they bring in to like fix the problem. They don't want to be here either. Anyone. Yeah, they're not going to kill anyone. They're just like, but they're going to do what it takes to fix the issue.
Well, not the guys in Michael Clayton who immediately come in and assassinate somebody.
Yeah,
cold.
not those guys.
Not those guys.
I'm not talking about the movie Michael Clayton. I'm talking about the character Michael Clayton.
The character Michael Clayton.
Yeah.
But I think it's so great. And the other setup that seems to be a clear setup to me that it isn't paid off, and I think I'm so happy that it wasn't, is I thought for sure we're going to get he's underage.
Oh, yeah.
She's statutory in the wrong. And I love that seems to be very set up because we have this whole discussion about how old we are and you're a little older than me. And I thought they're going to come in and be like, you have no idea. He even has that line where he's like, he's a child. And I was like, here we go. Here it comes. And it doesn't do that. The movie is so much smarter and more sophisticated and subtler than a movie, right? It's creating this situation that I think walks a really interesting line. And that's what Sean Baker does. He has really become one of my favorite filmmakers. Red Rocket was in my top 3 or 5 the year it came out.
I rewatched it this week.
I love that movie. It's incredible. And, we had a big argument about the Florida Project. That doesn't mean it didn't resonate for me. And it's still a movie I think about. Like, nobody makes movies like he makes them. They feel alive in a way that very few filmmakers can achieve. They feel grounded and real and gritty and they have texture in a way, and again, we've talked about the subject matter being what most people don't even talk about. But I think the kinds of people, the kinds of situations and the energy that he puts on the screen, I don't know how he does it. It's an amazing skill to be able to create this energy and momentum that is present in Anora.
It's also the way he constructs relationships between characters, which is the thing I like when people pay special attention to that, which is why I want to highlight Igor, one of the henchmen, who good. I think is just so perfectly set up from the beginning, right? They bring him just bring in this guy, you go get the kid, okay? And Igor's there. And this whole the insane scene of them trying to hold her steady happens. And Igor is the guy being like, are you okay? Sorry about this. Like, he is thinking about her and her needs and her perspective. And he does that throughout the entire movie. And it gets pretty blatant after a certain point, but it's just like, that's kind of nice. He doesn't have to say much. You know, he's a quiet guy in the corner,
decent.
but he is at least he's a decent dude who's paying attention to her. And what's also really funny is that all those henchmen, they're right. They are absolutely right about the kids. Like, you should not be married to this idiot. You know, like, this is not going to work out. Like, he is going to disappoint you in somehow. So what's funny is that she is actively working against that because she doesn't know the full situation. But I also find it kind of funny. They're like, yeah, they were right. How often is that situation happening where the people trying to capture you are actually correct about the situation?
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
So
One of the
smart.
things I want to also mention about Sean Baker's filmmaking is he's such a good job of capturing place, like
Yeah.
locations. Like, first of all, his movies have tons of locations.
Mhm.
Like, it's just mind-boggling number of locations and setups. Which is just impressive for low-budget movies, which is mostly what he makes. And here they're roaming all around New York, and you really feel like you get a sense of what that place is like.
Well,
right?
specifically,
Like,
they're roaming around
right? Like,
Coney Island,
Yeah.
Brighton Beach, and the
Yeah.
really like Russian area. I think they call it Little Odessa at the real bottom of Brooklyn. So you spend a lot of time there in this movie. They go to Tatiana, which is one of those like restaurants. It's kind of kitschy and campy, but everybody goes there because it's one of the big things on the boardwalk. I've been to that candy shop that they highlight too. Sense of place is just so great. But I love that this basically transforms into one of those crazy New York night movies too, which is one of those things I adore. Absolutely.
I gotta say the movie was hilarious.
Yeah,
hilarious.
So funny.
Just when starting the 40-minute, I mean, it was pretty funny the first the love story part, or whatever you guys want to call it. But then after that, it is so funny seeing these guys bumble their way through this situation that they are unprepared for, and the baby scene with the christening and all that. It's just like,
dude, it
hilarious.
gets really funny. I was cackling through this movie.
Yes,
it's very
absolutely.
fun.
Very fun.
Yeah.
And seeing like just all the crazy little misadventures they get up to. It's just
Dude,
like,
the scene with the tow truck.
Mm-hmm.
It's so fun. And that guy's like, what are you doing? It's my first day. So funny. And they're just standing back like, this dude's nuts.
The main guy, Toros is what is it? Like,
Toros,
he just has no social boundaries, right? He's just he's ruining people's dinners and being like, have you seen this person? Like, driving off the like, he just does not care because he knows he reports to someone more powerful than all these people.
Yeah.
Right? His life is ruined.
That's what's driving him.
I love the futility of what they're doing and how, like, you are literally trying to find a needle in a haystack. You know, you're trying to find this one little jerk in the massive city of New York, and they're just not going to stop. They can't give up. Like, all the other guys are like, we just got to go home.
The one guy has a concussion. He's vomiting. You know,
this dude.
It's just
the scene where he vomits in the car is so funny.
And it's like, dude, take him to the hospital. He's not contributing anything to your journey anymore. Like, what's going on? Anyway,
and the fact that it all stinks in the car now.
Yeah,
my wife has to drive this car in the morning.
It's so funny.
It's amazing.
Very legitimate concern of normal people. You know,
But just like that, I felt like somewhere deep inside me, I don't have a specific reference, but just that like vague sense of having to do something that seems impossible. Like, how? We're just going to drive around and hope that's what we're going to do?
That's a New York miracle, man. That is also one of those things, like, sometimes, like, listen, it's not random. They're going to go to places that they know. So that's kind of how they winnow it down to.
Right.
But they don't, they don't succeed. And there was no way they were going to succeed. The only thing that happens is her friend calls her and says he's here. They would never have found him. But they're like, we can't stop. We can't give up. There's no hope. And there's something so powerful about that. And then finding out that he's like all the way across town and they're racing to get there before he leaves.
I mean, what's also great about Sean Baker movies is he often uses like non-actors, people who have never acted before. And you just get a sense of like literally like facial variety, like of like, all these different people, like people look different in the real world. And you get that sense in Sean Baker. And there's all these little like minor subplots that I'm just like, gee, I wonder what happened to that person. So, for instance, in this movie, the lawyer, when you meet the oligarch's lawyer guy, right, and they show up at the courthouse the next day, finally find the guy, they show up at the courthouse the next day, and they meet the lawyer, and he's like, okay, like, you really like messed up my life and also this judge's life to have this guy here. They walk in, and then they discover that they were actually married in Nevada. It is an amazing moment.
Incredible. It's what I love. I talk about this all the time on my book club podcast that I do, talking about the Malazan Book of the Fallen, because no one does that better than Stephen Erickson, the author of Malazan Book of the Fallen. And it's a fantasy series, so it's very different than this. But that one of my favorite things in fiction is when the perfect solution has been earned, and then the author goes, nope. You still don't get it. It's still even hard. You're like, we have reached this point where all the machinations, and we went through trials and tribulations with our characters, and we got to the point where like, oh, they finally did it. And then there's another rug pull.
Yeah,
that is so satisfying to me because the author's like, I got more ideas, ladies and gentlemen.
Right.
I got more places for this to go.
Yeah.
You think we figured it out? Nope. And that's that scene where it's like, this poor guy has gone through hell, and he finally got the kid, and he got the girl, and he got them to the courthouse, and he's got the guy, and he's just like, shut up, get in there. He's not drunk. Just sit down, do it. And then it's like, no, you're in the wrong state, bro. And it's like, it's so
well, and I was like, that lawyer is probably gonna have a lot to answer for.
Oh yeah, his life is screwed
in the next
now.
meeting with that judge, but we never see it. So let's talk about the ending. So Devindra, like what was, so at the very end of the movie, first of all, I want to give a shout out to the whole Igor stuff throughout the movie, because Igor is in tons of the movie, and like to the point where I'm like, wow, that's so after the courthouse scene, Anora goes and like kind of begs. She kind of begs him like, hey, come on, I need you to wake up. And then like Igor's face is literally right between their faces.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? The whole time I'm like, why is Igor in so many shots? Like, this is
that's what I think is really clever in this movie, is that it's just because the camera finds him that we care about him.
He's always there. He's like
always the camera just sort of
paying attention.
He's just always off screen. I'm just like, what is going on? Like, was this a mistake? Like, did Sean Baker like mess this up? Did he not know that Igor was there?
The quiet Yakuza guy in The Simpsons, like, that guy's gonna do something.
Right.
I really want to see what's up with him.
It's from the very beginning, right? From the very beginning when we first meet them and that whole altercation, the camera keeps just like lingering on what he's thinking, and we never hear anything from him, but it just shows you the power of a camera angle, because you start caring about what this guy's going through, even though we don't know anything about him. He's just like, man, he really is like paying attention and looking. And
it's camera angle and eye lines too, because it's not like he's just staring off into space or on his phone. Like, he is locked in to what's happening.
So I'm like, this the whole time I'm thinking to myself, this Igor thing better pay off, Sean Baker, or else I'm going to feel like you were pretty clumsy with your camera placement. And of course, it does in a very wonderful way. Devindra, it sounded like you did not, you weren't a fan of the finale. So basically, I'm
just confused. Yeah,
Igor like takes care of her and then like drives her to her house. They have like
a really nice night together where they kind of bond a little bit. And that's he takes her back, he flies her back he tucks her in, and they're on their red-eye flight. And then he drives her home, and I think so is Anora just trying to figure out how she feels about people, right? Like, is it she initiates sex, he tries to kiss her, she says no, she starts crying, cut to black. And I'm just
to be fair, he comforts her.
He comforts her, but why? Like, I'm still trying to figure out what are you trying to say about Anora as a character by kind of doing this?
I think this goes back to why I freaked out about the central theme of this movie, because I think in that moment, this is my interpretation, but I think in that moment, what the movie is explicitly saying is she hasn't actually experienced anything real until this moment.
Yeah.
And what is so hard for her is the reality of what actual human contact and care is about. And she breaks down because all the artifice of that life she thought she wanted breaks down, and she realizes, oh, you know what is actually better than having a mansion and an elevator in your house and all that stuff? It's the care, the genuine care from another human being, which is why I don't think it was ever a love story between the two of them, because there was never any real feeling. She only gets real feeling at the end of the movie, and it's hard for her to handle. She goes through this paradigm shift. She goes through this reconfiguration of her internal life in that moment. And it's like, oh, her new life is going to start now. And that's when the movie cuts to black. That's what my interpretation was.
It actually ends up being a love story between Igor. Like, I think Igor kind of falls for her early on when he starts to take care of her, but she does not quite realize that until later on. It's just that whole scene, there's a lot going on, right? Because they pull up to her house. He's driving her grandma's car. I feel like that last fact where she jokes like, this is a car. This would be your car, right? It's kind of a shitty car. It's like, it's my grandma's car. And is that the connection that she was close to her grandma too as well? But the whole thing of like initiating the sex, but also is that her only way of relating to another person or to a potential romantic interest and not being able to accept the kiss? I see all that. I saw everything you said, Jeff. And to me, I was like, that actually feels a little too on the nose for what this movie has been doing up until now.
First of all, I also want to mention, like, Igor gave her the ring. So he must have like pickpocketed Toros at some point to get the ring back.
He's going to get shit for that.
I think we explicitly see him do it.
I see. Yeah. So she's very moved by that. And I don't think you're wrong, Jeff, but I think what you're describing is like 10 to 20% of what she's experiencing in that moment. And I think the other 80% is she's been through a horrifying, traumatic series of events. Sure. She has been through like having this big dream and then having those dreams dashed. And then she's been on this like nearly fruitless search where she's been dragged literally across the country to like annul this marriage and to like annihilate her dreams for good. And that would make anyone cry. That would make literally anyone cry. And so
yes, but what she's forced to come to reckon with is that this piece of shit was never on that page.
Absolutely. I'm saying all that is trauma. All that is like horrifying trauma. And I think the bulk of what she's experienced. And yes, there is this connection with Igor and the fact that he actually genuinely cares about her. There's that shot where he's like looking at her through the snow. It's so beautiful. And it's all mixed in there. It's all together with what you said. I don't think you're wrong, but I think like this is other big piece of she just had her dreams destroyed. That's like I don't know if
that was really her dream. Like, is the thing. I think like Jeffy, you're probably more like at least how I'm thinking of it. My whole thing is just the execution of it, because it does feel like this movie was kind of a wild romp for a while, and then it kind of slows down to this, and we end on a really just sad and kind of tragic scene.
Yeah.
And that so I'm still processing that mainly. I think what you're both saying is true, but Jeff, like, philosophically, that is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Like,
it's a movie about how social mobility is impossible in the United States. Like people in these different classes can't ever meet.
Right.
Like they can never be with each other. And it's not just like both parties are trapped. Like it's not just Anora, it's also Vanya. He cannot hope to get out of his situation either.
The experience that I had at the end, because we have this big crescendo and then the movie keeps going. Yeah. And how it keeps going is the scene that Devindra pointed out where, they're back at the mansion apartment and the two of them are there and they're kind of watching TV and hanging out. And I, in that moment, was like, please, movie, don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't have the pat romance between these two. And I was so terrified that they were going to have some connection and it was going to be like, oh, the John Hughes ending, the one who likes you was there all along. That's what I was terrified was going to happen.
Right.
And what I was so pleased by is that it doesn't, and that she does that whole come hither. Well, I'm going up. She goes up. He doesn't follow. She comes back down. Okay, here's your thing back. Going up. What the modality that she has lived in her entire life, adult life, is that dude comes up and they screw, right? That's the modality, is that, well, there's a man here and we kind of have a little bit of a flirtation thing going on and he's, but that's not who this dude is. And she can't wrangle it. She's still like, well, fuck you. you're a piece of shit. That you drive a piece of shit. She's doing the like a
negging him a little bit.
Fourth grader on the playground, like punching the boy she likes, right? And then at the end, she's like, well, hell, it does this beautiful thing, right? Where we get these two reverse shots of staring right into the lens. They're looking at us and at each other directly. And she looks at him. He looks at her. They see each other. We see characters who see each other for the first time, right? Or any character in this movie seeing another character for what they really are. And then she's like, well, I got to do it myself. She does it. And he's like, he's going to do it, but he wants to have an actual moment of connection. And that is just outside her level of interaction with men, which is why, again, I don't think there was ever love. There was ever anything real that the movie was trying to present. It was her having forced to deal with someone who wants to interact with her as a human being rather than an object to own and to possess and to use, that she's like, I don't know how to handle this. And that's when the movie ends. Yeah. And I think that's what's so beautiful about that ending for me.
It is. I totally get the reading of it. It just feels like it's sort of like the vibes of the movie shifted and were mostly, hey, kind of fun. This is kind of fun to romp. Yeah. And then we get to the end and it's like, as you walk away, Anora is a broken person and has never really found love.
Right
before.
about that, man.
Yeah.
Right about that.
It's like a really fun romp about how tragic postmodern capitalism, late-stage capitalism is, basically.
It's so true.
And that's Nora. Thank you so much for watching this video of the Filmcast. Check out these other videos that we have available, and be sure to hit like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to get other videos from us in the future.
You can also go to thefilmcast.com to catch all of our audio podcast versions of all of our episodes.
And support this podcast at patreon.com/filmpodcast, where you can sign up for ad-free episodes and exclusive After Darks.
Thanks so much to everyone who makes the Filmcast possible.